Hey Mark, welcome on the call and great to meet you. Before we dive into the what we did with Solibri here at GTM Nordics, maybe you could give a word who is Mark and what you do.
Yeah, sure. Mark Bouten, been active for a bit more than 15 years in construction tech. So I've been working for various companies, and right now I'm the director at Solibri for global direct sales. And in essence, what I'm doing at Solibri is leading direct revenue growth across multiple regions. I focus on structuring sales execution, predictable performance, and I work on our strategy and cross-functional collaboration between especially customer success, marketing, and sales.
Yeah, and you mentioned that across multiple regions. So how is Solibri sales organization structured as of?
Yeah, so we are a globally operating company, so we've got users, customers across the entire world, but we differentiate between direct sales and indirect sales, so partner channel. And my team, so where we really have feet on the ground, are let's say the regions USA, and then dominantly in Europe, which is in the Nordics, in the UK, Ireland, France, Germany, of course, Benelux. And those are the main teams, the main areas where we operate directly.
Great, thanks. And we had a pretty extensive engagement with Solibri here at GTM Nordics, started already late last year and are coming to kind of ultimatum this June. What were the biggest challenges your sales organization was facing before we started working together?
A good one, because I'm fairly new to Solibri. I started on 1st of March, and of course they reached out to you before that time, but I think we got aligned quite quickly together. And I think you can agree with me. I think the biggest challenges were we had good people, so talented people in our company, also in my direct sales teams, but there was no consistent or uniform sales system. I mean, every region had developed their own ways of working. So for me, the biggest challenge when jumping in was it was just almost impossible to compare performance between the regions, but even also to coach people in a consistent way. So I think the dissimilarities, the differences between each of the regions, so each having had their own way of, okay, what does good look like for themselves, and challenging or managing that was the biggest challenge for me at the start. So that's what we worked on in our collaboration.
Was there any concrete impact you saw in the management, in the forecasting, in the overall performance due to that every region has their own way of working?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the process depended a lot on the region, but even on the individual seller within the regions. So there were lots of local habits on how, let's say, systems were used, but also how we were discussing our business. So discrepancies between discovery quality, stage progression, and leads. So we were looking at data. We were spending more time on analyzing data and understandings like where we're at than having the right conversations with our people. So forecasting was highly unpredictable. It was not evidence-based. It was more on optimism, gut feeling, stomach feeling, those type of things that we were doing before we started this entire transition.
Good. I believe the first step in this transition was kind of the unifying, of course, the way of working, the sales process across different regions, and then building methodology on top of that to ensure the disciplined and forecasting unified quality of sales. How did you approach the standardization of the sales process across different countries, and how that was embedded in the daily practice, so-called?
I think it was if we look at the entire project, when the idea started, it was last year. So let's say it took us 6 months, maybe a bit more from start to where we are at right now. And I think that the first thing was really clear to see, okay, let's start with defining a unified sales process that covers or just runs across all countries, all regions in which we're at. But also looking at that sales process, which is really based on buyer milestones. So rather than local interpretations that we had in the team. So first we got that process in place, and for us, what was important with defining that process is that it should not just be a sales process, because we also had misalignment or a disconnect between marketing, and we had a misalignment disconnect between CSM. So we really looked at the end-to-end process. We called it the one funnel approach within Solibri. So really defining that process. So what starts at marketing, where are the handovers, what does sales need to do, and how do we hand it over again to CSM to make sure we really get that advocacy, the happy customers at the end. So first step was defining that process, and then actually the second step was translating that process into our systems. So we're using Salesforce internally within the Solibri. So we really got that process. We translated that into Salesforce with clear stages, exit criteria, guidance for success, but especially also documenting, what does good look like? So what do we expect from each other in each of the steps in the Salesforce process or in our sales process? And for me, it was really important from day one. I like these type of things, but what I commonly see is that people really define a process which is really rigid, so almost like a straitjacket. And the first thing I was pushing on from the start is we should not create additional admin work for sales, but we really should have a process and a system in place that really supports our sales team in how they are expected to do their job. So not getting, let's say, a whole list of checkboxes and everything and just the exit gates which are forced upon for salespeople. So I think we did a good job in defining the process that we want to achieve or where we want to end up with, translating that to the system. And I think the third part is the most important part for me, is really embedding that in our management rhythm, so our cadence. So we applied pipeline reviews, forecast discussions, outbound planning, and even also individual coaching sessions on a regular basis. So really to make sure that, okay, we got a process on paper, we translated it to the system, and let's now start working accordingly. And I'm a true believer in, if you give something attention, it will start growing. So that's what we have been doing in the last period to really also make it part of our daily working habit and routine and cadence.
And as you said, it wasn't just only transforming how sales alone operates, but kind of tying different functions to drive the unified or common joint goal, which is, of course, happy customers at the end, combining marketing, sales, and customer success functions. It sounds also that, of course, these functions are run by different people and owned by different people. So how did you ensure that and brought sales and CSM, customer success function, along to ensure they adapted the new way of working and they actually drive that joint collaboration? That's typically the hardest part.
Yeah, definitely, because a while back we were siloed in regions. So every, let's say, region had their own autonomous operating business unit. Mm-hmm. And now we've transitioned to, let's say, somewhat more matrix organization where on the vertical we've got indeed direct sales, we've got customer success, we've got marketing, and then on the horizontal lines you got the different regions, of course, where you have these cross-functional teams acting in their region. But I think it was a very important step for us to also include customer success early on in the process. Because, I mean, as you just said, for us, it's not selling by closing the deal, like close one and then moving away to the next one. It's really to making sure that these customers, I mean, we are in the SaaS software business, so it's selling is one thing, but then the really difficult work starts to making sure that people start adopting your software and also really experience the value from it. So what we really worked on is getting customer success early on involved in the process. So understanding, okay, the collaborating with sales, what's going well, what's not going well. So having these interviews in place, getting that information, and that looking at, okay, does CSM understand what me as a manager from my direct sales team are expecting from them, so they can also understand, okay, how to push back on what sales is doing and what information they should be getting in order to be more successful in their work. Because before, really short examples, before we just involved CSM as well in the pre-sales phase, so doing more, let's say, in-depth demos of the product. And back in those days, it was simply CSM got called or scheduled in his agenda, you need to do a demo for company X. And they just went there, they did a demo, they just rolled their, let's say, I guess, default script from A to Z. So success rates were not as high as they should be or could be. But also the conversations at the table during the customer visit were completely off. So what we have been really working on is that CSMs understand is what our sales expected to do in opportunity qualification. And before we even do a demo, what information should they expect to receive from sales in order to really do a tailored demo on the customer pain or goals or whatever we want to name it. So that's what we worked on. So involving customer success early on, making them sure that they understand, okay, what does sales qualification mean? So what are we as sales responsible for, so they can pick up on that, tailor their demo and drive it further.
Yeah.
At least to close one deals.
Great. And what are the different tools you can actually make that reality? So how we actually make sure that the sales is taking the right information Is that driven by the process? Is that driven by the discovery framework? What are the different tools we implemented at you guys to drive that outcome?
I think the most important one, because we just briefly touched base on sales process. So process is one thing, but I always say a sales process is nothing if you don't have a good qualification methodology in place. So what are we expected to do during each of the stages? So MEDDPICC is, of course, we could have picked any other of the 500 qualification methodologies, but MEDDPICC comes from our business, so has a background in our business, and it suits our business pretty well. So we've implemented MEDDPICC as well. We've trained our people on what is MEDDPICC, how to apply it properly in your opportunity qualification, but also tying it back to customer success, that they understand what MEDDPICC is, and that's what ties in back to what I just said about what information does sales have to provide to our CSM. But even also at the early stage, you already mentioned the discovery framework. It's like, how do we properly, before we even reach out with our outbounding activities or even lead qualification that came inbound, is how do we quickly do a proper pre-discovery? So understanding, utilizing AI tools. I mean, we use Perplexity. We got this discovery capture sheet that we automatically generate before we reach out to customers, which gives us quite a good, let's say, a good direction on where to focus our conversations on. So that is part of the first step, and where we really looked at the 3 why questions in the discovery. So why anything, why us, why now? And from there on, if the opportunity is there, it will get into our pipeline, and we start applying MEDDPICC, to be honest, to really do the deep dive qualification across the stages.
And you already touched this. So we had a MEDDPICC training for the go-to-market people, and of course, training is one thing, but practicing and reading the methodology on the daily practice is a second thing, and which eventually will kind of enforce things. So that comes into life, if I get it right, through the sales process, which drives, and tools that drive the MEDDPICC discipline. It comes through the forecasting practices you guys implemented, and then of course the key deal reviews that you had in place for the certain opportunities, which follows then the MEDDPICC qualification framework. Was that right summary, Mark?
Yeah, I think for us it was very important to really embed the methodology. So everything that we put on paper, all the let's say knowledge we transferred during the awareness sessions, the training sessions, the Q&As, the testing sessions, even, is to really embed that methodology into our operating cadence. So we've got pipeline reviews in place where we apply this methodology. We got forecasting calls on a weekly basis. We got individual coaching sessions. We even got weekly sales syncs with the entire team, where we always get back to the process, the methodology. So the same process, the same language, and that really is also driving better discussions in our team. So that's also a big benefit.
Great. Sounds we did now reflecting back past 6 months, we did a hell of a job. Sales process, MEDDPICC, outbound training, outbound playbook, how to generate pipeline, and then of course all the trainings, one-to-one coaching. So a lot of different things were on the plate. What has changed in your business?
I think if we first of all, last quarter was one of the best quarters we've had, so we crushed it. So I'm not directly tying it up to a new sales process methodology and the cadence we have in place, but what I would say is Q2, so the last 3 months of our performance, looking at what we have been doing in the last 6 months, I 100% would say it provides a really solid foundation for us to become, let's say, a far more predictable, scalable direct sales engine. If I look at the level of forecasting where we are at, the predictability, the way we look at opportunities, the way we discuss them, our ability to flag risks far earlier on in the process instead of just at the end of the month, suddenly we see a drop in our forecast. So I think that the key thing that we've gained right now, what we already directly saw as soon as we've had, let's say, rolled out everything in a live setting, was that it's the foundation on which we can continue building further and get even better. So we already have seen the first results, but also if I look at the cross-functional discussions that we're having between marketing, customer success, far better alignment. I've attended a few demos together with my sales and CSM people. If you now look at how these demos go, it's far more tailored, far more, it's just focused on the customer instead of talking about our product. So I would say the first steps, the foundation is there. There's a strong connection between the methodology that we have, the systems that we have in place, but also the operating cadence that we're now running. So it looks very promising for us, especially if Q2 was the first indicator of our performance moving forward.
I'm a big fan of promoting common language. I believe everybody in the organization should have a same language and same goal, of course. And how do you see common language applied now at Solibri between the marketing with the CS and with the sales, that everybody having the same, let's say, conversations?
I think it brings more joy as well in the way we work, because we now understand each other. We look at certain KPIs and metrics that we all share, that we all agree on, because each of us contributes to each other's success. So having this common language and being able, not having this, let's say, Babylonic translation issue between the departments, but having these common KPIs, understanding who needs to do what and what can I contribute to make it even better. That's definitely driving a lot of more energy in cross-functional teams within Solibri at the moment. So I think that's a big one, but also this common language creates far better visibility for us, for me as a team leader, but also for our leadership. Because right now we're looking at our entire pipeline across all the regions, and we're all having the same discussions together on the things that we're working on. And maybe also interesting to note is that, yes, we have a new system in place, yes, a new process, yes, new methodology that we have embraced, so this common language. But I think the best thing as well is that this common language also right now facilitates and even sparks discussions within my team across the regions, which was not the case before, because everybody was doing their own, let's say, way of working, they had their own challenges and priorities that they were facing. So I think that's also a big benefit if I only look in my team cross regionals. So having that common language in place, but especially also in the collaboration with marketing and CSM, it's a very good step to have this awareness amongst everybody.
Exciting times ahead.
Definitely. I mean, if I look at what has been done, I mean, we're talking only about 6 months when I think this project or this initiative got approved internally. You got on board, I got on board in March, so 4 months in right now. And if I look what we've managed to do already and the impact it is having and the first signs, let's say the business impact results that we're seeing, there's definitely a positive, exciting times ahead for us in moving forward.